The sky over Lake Michigan was turning a bruised purple when the heavy thump of helicopter blades rattled the broken windows of the estate. Du Hyun stood in the ruined grand foyer, slamming a full magazine into his black assault rifle. Ae Cha stood next to him, spinning a combat knife in her hand. Outside, the chairman's elite cleaners were dropping into the snow, looking like black shadows against the white ground. They moved in perfect silence. They were here to kill everyone. "Get ready," Du Hyun told the massive captain of Sangwoo's guards. "They are going to breach the front gate in 10 seconds. We hold the line right here." The giant captain with the scarred face didn't look at the front doors. He slowly racked the slide of his shotgun and pointed the heavy barrel right at the back of Du Hyun's head. "No," the captain growled, his voice rough and full of hate. "We are not dying for you. You shot our boss like a dog. You humiliated Sangwoo. The men don't follow you, little dragon. We are trading you to your father's cleaners so they let us walk away." Du Hyun froze. He heard the metallic clicks of 20 rifles being raised all around him. The Chicago men were turning on him. His brutal move to cripple his uncle had backfired completely. He hadn't bought their loyalty with money. He had only bought their silent anger, and now they were selling him out. Ae Cha cursed under her breath. "Well, shit, this just got really messy." "Drop the rifle, Du Hyun," the captain ordered, stepping closer. "Or I blow your head off right now." "Pause, don't look away." The cleaners are at the door, and Du Hyun's own army just turned their guns on him. He is completely surrounded, outnumbered 20-2. "Before we see if Du Hyun can shoot his way out of this trap, I need you to do something for me. Where are you listening from right now? Is your heart beating as fast as mine? Drop your city in the comments and rate this crazy plot twist from 1 to 10. Listen to me closely. Du Hyun is staring down the barrel of a shotgun. He needs a miracle. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Timeless Caleb right this second, you are pulling the trigger on him yourself. You are leaving Ngozi and the babies without protection. Do you want the bad guys to win? Hit subscribe, like the video, and let's help Du Hyun fight back. Du Hyun didn't drop his rifle. He gripped it tighter. He didn't care about dying, but if he died here, the men would go down to the bunker and drag Ngozi out to give to his father. That was never going to happen. Du Hyun spun around fast. He didn't aim at the captain. He aimed at the heavy glass chandelier hanging directly over the mutineers' heads. He pulled the trigger, spraying bullets into the ceiling. The massive crystal fixture crashed down on top of the traitor's soldiers, crushing 3 of them and sending sharp glass exploding across the room. The captain roared in anger and fired his shotgun, but Du Hyun and Ae Cha had already dove behind the thick marble pillars. The grand foyer turned into a deafening war zone. Wood splintered and stone shattered as Du Hyun traded bullets with the men he had just paid to protect him. Deep under the shaking house, Ngozi ran down the cold concrete stairs. She was carrying Minho on her hip while clutching Di-young and Kioma tightly by their hands. The kids were crying from the loud noises vibrating through the floorboards above them. "Hurry, babies, hurry," Ngozi gasped, her bare feet slapping against the cold cement. At the bottom of the stairs, the heavy steel door to the underground bunker was wide open. Mrs. Kim, the sweet older woman who had cooked them stew that morning, was standing inside. She waved them in quickly. "Come inside, child," Mrs. Kim urged, her face tight with worry. "Quickly before they get down here." Ngozi rushed into the small, brightly lit concrete room. It was stocked with water, canned food, and cots. She pushed the children behind her, turning around to help Mrs. Kim pull the massive steel door shut. The heavy metal locked with a loud, final click. Ngozi let out a massive breath, leaning against the cold wall. She closed her eyes. They were safe. The bunker could survive a bomb. All they had to do was wait for Du Hyun. "Thank you, Mrs. Kim," Ngozi panted, wiping sweat and dirty tears from her face. "Thank you for waiting for us." "I wasn't waiting to save you," Mrs. Kim said. Her voice didn't sound sweet or motherly anymore. It sounded cold and dead. Ngozi opened her eyes. Mrs. Kim was standing by the emergency radio. In her right hand, she held a small, black pistol. She pointed it directly at Ngozi's chest. "What are you doing?" Ngozi whispered, her blood turning to ice. She stepped backward, shielding the crying babies with her body. "I have cooked for Sangwoo for 20 years," Mrs. Kim said flatly, her eyes dark. But I don't work for him. I work for Chairman Beek. I am his eyes in Chicago. When Du Hyun stole the chairman's money, the old man called me on a private line. He told me to lock you in the vault and put a bullet in your head. Ngozi stared at the gun, a sleeper agent. The chairman had a spy living in Sang-woo's house for 2 decades. The old man was a demon. He saw everything. He controlled everything. Please, Ngozi begged, her voice cracking. I will let you kill me. I won't fight you. Just don't hurt the children. Please, they are innocent. Mrs. Kim looked at the 3 triplets hiding behind Ngozi's legs. The older woman's face twisted with disgust. The chairman said mixed blood is a poison to the Beek family tree. The poison has to be burned away, all of it. Mrs. Kim raised the gun and aimed it at Minho's head. Something broke inside Ngozi. The terrified, running street girl died in that exact second. A violent, desperate mother took her place. Ngozi didn't scream. She lunged forward like a wild animal. Mrs. Kim fired a shot. The bullet grazed Ngozi's ribs, tearing through her silk robe and burning her skin like a hot iron, but Ngozi didn't even slow down. She crashed into the older woman, knocking the gun out of her hand. The weapon slid across the smooth concrete floor. The 2 women fell to the ground in a vicious tangle. Mrs. Kim was older, but she was strong and fighting for the chairman's approval. She punched Ngozi hard in the face, splitting her lip open. Ngozi tasted fresh blood, but she didn't care. She grabbed a heavy steel can of soup from the supply shelf that had spilled onto the floor. You don't touch my babies, Ngozi screamed, her voice raw and terrifying. She swung the heavy steel can down as hard as she could. It smashed into Mrs. Kim's face with a sickening crunch. The older woman gasped, her hands flying up to protect herself, but Ngozi didn't stop. She swung again and again, driven by pure, dark panic. She was crossing a line she could never uncross. She was taking a life. She hit the spy until Mrs. Kim stopped moving completely. Ngozi dropped the bloody can. Her hands were shaking violently. She stared at the dead woman on the floor, her chest heaving. She had just killed someone. She was covered in blood. But when she turned around, her babies were staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. They were alive. Upstairs, the house was tearing itself apart. Du Hyun ducked behind a flipped marble table as bullets chewed up the stone all around him. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. The Chicago mutineers were closing in on him from the hallway, and outside, the cleaners were throwing smoke grenades through the broken windows. He had to get to the bunker. He checked his phone. The security feed to the vault was dead. Someone had cut the wire. Panic gripped his throat. The threat was inside the house. Ae-cha, Du Hyun yelled over the gunfire. Cover me, I have to blow the bunker doors. He grabbed a block of C4 explosive from his tactical vest, preparing to make a suicidal run for the basement stairs. But suddenly, the entire front wall of the estate exploded inward. It wasn't the cleaners. 2 massive, armored trucks smashed right through the stone walls, crushing the expensive furniture and sending dust rolling through the air like a thick fog. Bright red and blue lights flashed wildly through the smoke. A loud siren screamed, deafening everyone in the room. Dozens of men poured out of the trucks. They didn't wear mafia suits or black assassin gear. They wore heavy tactical vests with giant yellow letters on the back. FBI. FBI Anti-Mafia Task Force. A voice boomed over a loud megaphone. Drop your weapons. Everyone drop your damn weapons right now. Du Hyun stared through the smoke. The feds. His massive cyber heist had triggered every federal alarm in the country. Moving billions of dollars in illegal money across the world wasn't a quiet crime. The United States government had tracked the digital footprint straight to Sang-woo's estate. Total chaos erupted. The cleaners, seeing the federal agents, immediately started shooting at the cops. The FBI returned fire with heavy machine guns. The Chicago mutineers, terrified of going to federal prison, started shooting at everyone. It was a 3-way bloodbath. Bodies dropped on all sides. The noise was unbearable. Du Hyun didn't care about the feds or the money. He crawled through the smoke and the flying bullets, making his way to the basement door. He kicked it open and scrambled down the concrete stairs. When he reached the bottom, the steel bunker door was slowly creeping open. Ngozi was standing there. She looked like a nightmare. Her face was bruised, her clothes were torn, and her hands were covered in dark, wet blood. Du Hyun dropped his rifle and ran to her. He pulled her into his arms, checking her over frantically. "Are you okay? Whose blood is this?" "The chef," Ngozi sobbed, collapsing against his chest. "She had a gun. I had to do it, Du Hyun. I had to stop her." Du Hyun looked over her shoulder and saw the dead body on the floor. He pulled Ngozi tighter, kissing the top of her head. "You did what you had to do. You protected our family. I am so proud of you." "Du Hyun Beek, put your hands in the air." Du Hyun turned around. A tall FBI agent with gray hair and a sharp suit was walking down the concrete stairs. He had a gun pointed right at Du Hyun's chest. 4 heavily armed federal tactical officers followed right behind him, their laser sights locked on Du Hyun's face. The battle upstairs was still raging, but down here, Du Hyun was completely trapped. "It is over, kid," the lead agent said, stepping to the bottom of the stairs. "We have the whole estate surrounded. We have the digital logs of the cyber heist. We know you stole $3 billion from the Beek Mafia." Du Hyun stood in front of Ngozi, shielding her and the kids. "What do you want?" "We want the money and we want you," the agent said coldly. "Here is the deal. You are a mafia boss. You are going to a federal black site for the rest of your miserable life. But if you surrender right now and give us the encryption keys to the money, I will put the woman and the kids in witness protection. They get new names, a new house, and complete safety from your father. The government will hide them forever." Du Hyun felt his heart stop. "If you fight us," the agent continued, his voice hard, "we kill you right here. And your girlfriend and those babies go into the foster system, where your father's men will find them in about 2 days. Ngozi grabbed Du Hyun's arm. Her fingers dug painfully into his skin. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "No, Du Hyun, we are not leaving you. We just found you. I won't let them take you away forever." Du Hyun looked into Ngozi's eyes. He saw the desperate, fierce love shining through the dirt and the blood. He looked at the 3 babies huddled in the vault, looking at him like he was their hero. He looked back at the FBI agent. The choice was agonizing. Surrender his own life and freedom to guarantee his family's safety, or fight a completely suicidal, 2-front war against the United States government and the entire Beek underworld empire just to stay together. Du Hyun slowly lowered his hands toward his waist. Du Hyun's hands slowly lowered toward his waist. The 4 federal tactical officers tightened their grips on their heavy machine guns. The bright red laser sights danced across Du Hyun's forehead and his chest. "Don't do anything stupid, kid," the gray-haired FBI agent warned. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Du Hyun's fingers brushed against the heavy tactical vest he wore over his bloody tuxedo shirt. He didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out a small, thick black phone. It was the heavily encrypted device A.E. Cha had used to drain the Beek Mafia's accounts. "You want the $3 billion, Du Hyun said. His voice was completely calm, cutting through the muffled sounds of the war still raging upstairs. "You want to be the hero agent who brings down the biggest mafia empire in the country. If you put me in handcuffs right now, you get nothing." The agent frowned. "We already traced the digital footprint. We have the accounts frozen." "Frozen isn't yours," Du Hyun smirked. It was a cold, arrogant smile. "It is locked behind a military-grade firewall. I set it up to self-destruct. If I don't enter the exact 40-character passcode into this phone in the next 10 minutes, the entire $3 billion is permanently deleted. It vanishes into thin air. You lose the money, you lose your biggest piece of evidence, and your bosses in Washington fire you for messing up the biggest bust of your life." The FBI agent's face turned completely pale. He knew Du Hyun was telling the absolute truth. The feds were greedy. They needed the cash to make the case stick and to get their promotions. "If you let my family and me walk out of this house right now," Du Hyun bargained, holding the phone up in the air, "I will give you the passcode. You keep the money. You arrest my father's cleaners upstairs. You get your medals. But if you try to take me away from her..." He looked back at Ngozi. "I will press this button and burn it all." Pause. Du Hyun is literally holding $3 billion hostage to save his family. "Before we see if this insane bluff actually works, tell me, Where are you watching from right now? Are you on the edge of your seat? Rate Do Hyun's crazy negotiation skills from 1 to 10 in the comments. And look at Ngozi. She is bleeding and exhausted, trying to protect her 3 tiny babies from the FBI and a mafia death squad. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Timeless K-Love right now, you're turning your back on her. You are telling the government to throw Do Hyun in a dark hole forever and leave those kids fatherless. Don't be the reason this family gets torn apart. Hit subscribe, smash the like button, and let's get them out of this bunker. The FBI agent gritted his teeth. He looked at the black phone, then at Do Hyun's dark, fearless eyes. He was sweating now. Upstairs, a massive explosion shook the entire foundation of the house. It was so loud it made Ngozi's ears ring. Dust and small pieces of concrete fell from the bunker ceiling. The cleaners were using heavy explosives. They were going to bring the whole estate down on top of them just to make sure Do Hyun died. "We don't have time for this," Do Hyun yelled over the ringing in their ears. "My father's death squad is going to blow this basement wide open in 2 minutes. Do we have a deal or do we all die down here?" The agent lowered his gun. He signaled his tactical team to lower their weapons too. "Give me the code." "Get us out of the house first," Do Hyun countered. He grabbed Ngozi's hand. "Sangwoo has a smuggler's tunnel at the back of this vault. It leads straight to the lake. You cover our backs, and I text you the code when my family hits the water." The agent hesitated for a second, then nodded sharply. "Move, now." Do Hyun turned to Ngozi. "Grab the babies. We are running." Ngozi didn't waste a single second. She scooped up Minho and Kioma in her arms. Di-young clung tightly to her back, wrapping his small arms around her neck. She was exhausted, bleeding from the cut on her ribs, and absolutely terrified, but she moved with the strength of a lioness. She wasn't going to let anyone take her children. Do Hyun pushed past the dead body of Mrs. Kim. He went to the back wall of the concrete bunker. He pushed aside a heavy metal shelf filled with canned food. Behind it was a thick iron hatch built right into the floor. He grabbed the rusted wheel and turned it hard. It squeaked loudly, then popped open, revealing a dark, narrow dirt tunnel that smelled like wet mud and dead fish. "Go down," Do Hyun ordered Ngozi. "I am right behind you." Ngozi climbed down the metal ladder into the dark, holding the children as tight as she could. It was pitch black down there, and the air was freezing cold. Do Hyun climbed down right after her. He pulled the heavy iron hatch shut just as the steel door of the bunker blew completely off its hinges. The cleaners had broken through. Heavy machine gun fire instantly rained down from the top of the stairs. The FBI agents fired back, filling the small room with deafening noise. The iron hatch above Do Hyun's head pinged and dented loudly as bullets slammed into the metal. "Run!" Do Hyun shouted into the dark tunnel. He clicked a small flashlight on his rifle, casting a narrow white beam ahead of them. The tunnel was narrow and low. Do Hyun had to crouch down to walk. Water dripped from the dirt ceiling, freezing on their skin like tiny needles. Ngozi stumbled over sharp rocks and thick tree roots. Her bare feet were bleeding, leaving red footprints in the mud, but she didn't stop. She listened to the heavy, panicked breathing of her children. They were so good. They didn't cry. They just held on to her like their lives depended on it. "Almost there," Do Hyun promised. He stayed right behind her, keeping his rifle pointed back the way they came, ready to shoot anyone who opened that hatch. The muffled sounds of the war above ground were slowly fading, replaced by the sound of rushing wind and crashing waves. They turned a sharp corner in the dirt tunnel. The freezing wind hit them hard in the face. At the end of the dirt path was a heavy wooden door. It was slightly open. Pale moonlight leaked through the crack. It was the exit. It opened right onto the rocky shore of the frozen lake. There was a small metal dock there and a sleek black speedboat tied to a thick wooden post. "A boat," Ngozi gasped, tears of pure relief flooding her eyes. "Do Hyun, there is a boat." "Sangwoo's emergency ride," Do Hyun said. He pushed past her to kick the wooden door wide open. "Get in, I'll start the engine." They burst out of the tunnel and into the freezing winter night. The wind whipped Ngozi's messy hair around her face. The massive lake was completely black, full of floating chunks of dangerous ice. The waves crashed loudly against the rocks. Do Hyun ran to the boat. He jumped in and started flipping switches on the dashboard. The powerful engine sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. "Come on," he yelled, holding his bloody hand out to Ngozi. Ngozi ran onto the metal dock. The wood was extremely slippery with fresh ice. She almost fell, but she caught her balance. She handed Kioma to Du-hyun, then passed Min-ho into his strong arms. She was just about to step onto the boat with Di-young when a blindingly bright light suddenly clicked on. The bright spotlight didn't come from the house behind them. It came from the water. A massive, armored patrol boat drifted slowly out from behind a large rock formation. It was painted completely black, blending in perfectly with the night. On the metal deck stood 10 men dressed in black tactical gear. They weren't FBI agents. They were the cleaners. And standing at the very front of the boat, wearing a thick wool coat and holding a heavy sniper rifle, was Chairman Beek himself. The old man hadn't stayed safely in New York. His pride was too big. He had come to Chicago to watch his only son die in person. "Going somewhere, Du-hyun?" Chairman Beek called out over a loud megaphone. His voice echoed across the frozen water, sounding like the devil himself. Du-hyun froze. He held his 2 children tightly to his chest. He looked at the heavy guns pointed right at his boat. If he tried to speed away, the cleaners would rip their small boat to shreds in seconds. They were completely trapped on the ice. "Let the woman and the bastards go," the chairman announced over the speaker. "Step off the boat, son. Face me like a man, and I will let them run into the woods." "Don't listen to him," Ngozi screamed over the loud engine. She pulled Di-young tighter to her back. "He is lying. He will kill us all." Du-hyun knew she was right. His father never left loose ends. The old man wanted the entire bloodline erased. Du-hyun set Min-ho and Kioma down on the floor of the boat, hiding them behind the metal seats. He stood up straight, facing the blinding spotlight. He pulled out the black phone with the bank codes. "If you shoot us, you stay broke forever," Du-hyun yelled back, holding the phone up high. "I don't care about the money anymore," the chairman laughed. It was a cold, sick sound. "I care about respect, and you disrespected me in front of the whole city. Shoot them all." The cleaners raised their heavy rifles. Du-hyun dove forward, trying to cover Ngozi with his own body. But before the cleaners could pull their triggers, a massive, deafening roar tore through the sky above them. It was so loud the water around the boats vibrated. 2 dark military helicopters dropped out of the thick clouds, hovering right over the chairman's patrol boat. The side doors slid open, revealing huge Gatling guns pointed straight down at the cleaners. "Drop your weapons immediately," a voice boomed from the helicopters. It wasn't the FBI. Du-hyun squinted through the bright lights. He saw a figure leaning out of the side of the closest helicopter. The person had short, spiky hair and a scar through her eyebrow. It was Ae-cha. She hadn't stayed in the house to fight the cops. She had called in her own freelancer backup. "I told you I hated suicide missions, boss," Ae-cha yelled down at Du-hyun with a massive grin. Chairman Beek looked up at the giant guns pointed at his head. For the first time in his long, evil life, the old man looked completely terrified. The heavy barrels of the Gatling guns started to spin. They made a loud, terrifying whine that cut right through the howling wind. It was the sound of absolute death. The massive weapons pointed straight down at the cleaners on the metal deck of the patrol boat. "I said drop the damn guns," Ae-cha screamed from the open door of the helicopter. Her voice echoed over the loudspeaker. "Or I will turn this boat into a floating piece of Swiss cheese. 5-4. The cleaners were elite killers, but they weren't stupid. They knew they couldn't shoot down a military helicopter with standard rifles before they got ripped to pieces. One by one, the men in black tactical gear lowered their weapons. They dropped their heavy guns onto the metal deck. They put their hands in the air. Chairman Beek stood at the front of the boat. He didn't drop his sniper rifle. He stared up at the helicopter, his face completely frozen in shock. His perfect plan was falling apart. Du-hyun didn't waste a second. He stepped off the small speedboat and back onto the icy wooden dock. His boots crunched loudly in the quiet night. He walked straight toward the massive black patrol boat. He didn't raise his silver gun. He just walked right up to the edge of the water, looking up at his father. "It is over," Du-hyun said. His voice was cold, completely empty of any love or respect. Put the gun down, old man. Chairman Beak looked down at his son. His hands shook. The proud, arrogant mask he wore for his whole life finally cracked. He looked old. He looked tired, but he still held the rifle tight. You think you won, Chairman Beak spit. You think you can steal my money and walk away with this trash? He pointed a shaking finger at Ngozi, who was hiding the babies in the back of the speedboat. I built this empire from nothing. I am a king. You are just a stupid boy playing with things you don't understand. Du Hyun stopped at the edge of the dock. He looked up at the man who had ruined his life. He felt the cold handle of his gun in his holster, but he didn't touch it. Kneel, Du Hyun commanded. Pause, don't blink. Du Hyun just told the most dangerous mafia boss in America to get on his knees. The tension here is completely insane. Before we see if the chairman actually bows to his son, I need to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching this from right now? Is it as cold there as it is on this freezing lake? Drop your location in the comments and rate Du Hyun's boss energy from 1 to 10. Now listen to me. Chairman Beak is holding a loaded sniper rifle. He is desperate. Desperate men do crazy things. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Timeless Caleb right this second, the chairman might just pull that trigger and shoot Du Hyun right in the chest. Don't let the bad guy win. Hit subscribe, smash the like button, and let's help Du Hyun finish this fight. Chairman Beak stared at Du Hyun. His eyes were wide with pure hate. I will never kneel to you. Kneel, Du Hyun said again, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Or Ae Cha shoots you in the legs and you fall down anyway. Your choice. The chairman looked up at the helicopter. The giant guns were pointed right at him. He slowly lowered the sniper rifle. He dropped it onto the metal deck. His knees shook. Slowly, painfully, the proud Chairman Beak dropped to his knees on the freezing floor of his own boat. Du Hyun looked down at him. He pulled the thick black phone out of his pocket. The screen glowed brightly in the dark. You called me a stupid boy, Du Hyun said softly. You said I was weak because I wanted to love a woman instead of running your bloody empire. You said she was trash. Du Hyun typed a quick message on the phone. You wanted to teach me a lesson, Du Hyun continued. You wanted to show me how the real world works, so I am going to show you. Du Hyun hit the send button. What did you just do? The chairman asked, panic creeping into his voice. I just texted the 40-character encryption code to the lead FBI agent standing inside that tunnel, Du Hyun said. He tossed the black phone into the freezing water of the lake. It sank instantly. I just gave the United States government your $3 billion, every single penny. Your shadow accounts are gone. Your bribe money is gone. You cannot pay your politicians. You cannot pay your lawyers. No, the chairman screamed, his voice cracking. You gave it to the feds. You gave away our money. It was never my money, Du Hyun said flatly, and now it isn't yours. Loud shouting echoed from the dark tunnel behind Du Hyun. Flashlights cut through the snow. The FBI tactical team was running down the dirt path, their guns drawn. They had received the code. They were coming to make the biggest arrest of their careers. The feds are here, Du Hyun told his father. Your cleaners surrendered. You have no money. You have no army. You are going to spend the rest of your miserable life in a tiny concrete box. And every day you sit in that cell, I want you to remember that the girl you called trash is the reason you lost everything. Du Hyun turned his back on his father. He didn't look back as the old man screamed and cursed his name. Du Hyun jumped into the speedboat. He pushed the throttle forward as hard as it would go. The powerful engine roared, tearing through the dark water. The boat flew across the freezing lake, leaving the dock, the cleaners, and Chairman Beak far behind. As they sped away into the dark night, the military helicopters banked sharply and followed them, flying low over the water to protect them from any more surprises. The wind on the open lake was brutal. It felt like sharp knives cutting their skin. Ngozi sat on the hard floor of the boat, wrapping Du Hyun's bloody tuxedo jacket around the 3 crying toddlers. She tried to shield them from the freezing spray of the water. Her whole body shook violently. Du Hyun steered the boat with one hand. He reached down with his other hand and pulled Ngozi close to his leg. He needed to touch her. He needed to know she was really there, that this wasn't just a dream before he died. We made it, Du Hyun shouted over the loud engine. They won't follow us. The FBI has him. Ngozi looked up at him. Her face was covered in bruises and dried blood from her fight with Mrs. Kim. Her dark eyes were full of tears, but she wasn't crying from fear anymore. She was crying from pure relief. She rested her head against his leg, holding her babies tight. They drove across the black water for what felt like hours. The sky started to turn light gray. Morning was coming. Du-Hyun's hands were completely numb on the steering wheel, but he didn't slow down until he saw a small wooden dock hidden in a thick line of pine trees on the opposite shore. He cut the engine. The boat drifted quietly into the dock, bumping gently against the old tires tied to the wood. Du-Hyun jumped out and tied the rope to a post. The military helicopters hovered high above them, scanning the woods, before finally turning around and flying away. Ae-cha had done her job. She was probably going to collect a massive paycheck from the money Du-Hyun had promised her. Come on, Du-Hyun reached down into the boat. He picked up Min-ho and Di-young. Ngozi grabbed Kioma. She could barely stand up. Her legs felt like jelly. She stepped onto the wooden dock and immediately stumbled. Du-Hyun caught her arm, holding her steady. I got you, he whispered. Just a little further. He led them up a small dirt path through the thick trees. Hidden deep in the woods was an old, ugly cabin. It looked like nobody had lived there for 20 years. The roof was sagging and the windows were dirty. But it was safe. It was one of Sang-woo's old hunting traps, completely off the grid. Du-Hyun kicked the front door open. The inside smelled like dust and old wood. There was a large stone fireplace on the wall, a dirty couch, and a small kitchen. Du-Hyun put the boys down on the couch. He immediately went to the fireplace and started pulling dry logs from a pile in the corner. He worked fast, his bloody hands shaking from the cold. He found an old box of matches and struck one. The dry wood caught fire instantly, sending a warm, bright glow across the dark room. Ngozi sat on the floor right in front of the fire. She pulled the children into her lap. They were freezing, their lips pale. She rubbed their small arms, trying to bring the heat back into their tiny bodies. Are we safe now? Kioma asked, her voice tiny and weak. Yes, baby, Ngozi kissed her cold forehead. We are very safe. The bad men are gone. Du-Hyun walked into the kitchen. He found a rusty sink and turned the metal handle. Brown water spit out, then slowly turned clear. He grabbed a dirty rag, ran it under the cold water, and walked back to the living room. He knelt on the dusty floor next to Ngozi. He didn't say a word. He just gently took her chin in his hand and started wiping the dried blood off her face. His touch was incredibly soft, a sharp contrast to the brutal violence he had shown all night. Ngozi winced as the wet rag touched her split lip. Sorry, Du-Hyun whispered. His dark eyes searched her face. I am so sorry I put you through this. You didn't put me through this, Ngozi said. She reached up and touched his face. He had a deep cut on his forehead, and his shoulder was wrapped in a bloody bandage. We fought through it together. You came back for us. I will always come back for you, he promised. He moved the rag down to her ribs. The bullet from Mrs. Kim's gun had grazed her skin, leaving a nasty, burnt cut across her side. The silk robe was ruined. Du-Hyun carefully cleaned the wound, his jaw tight with anger. He hated that she had to bleed because of his family. He hated that she had to kill a woman in a dark basement just to protect their children. It hurts, Ngozi whispered, tears pooling in her eyes again. I know, Du-Hyun pulled her into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, avoiding her injured ribs. He buried his face in her messy hair. He finally let himself breathe. The heavy, crushing weight of the last 24 hours hit him all at once. He was exhausted. They sat on the floor in front of the warm fire for a long time. The three toddlers slowly stopped shivering. The heat from the flames made them sleepy. Within 20 minutes, all three of them were completely asleep on the dirty couch, piled on top of each other like puppies. Du-Hyun leaned back against the bottom of the couch, pulling Ngozi with him. She rested her head on his good shoulder. The cabin was completely quiet. The only sound was the popping of the wood in the fire. What happens now? Ngozi asked quietly, staring at the orange flames. Du-Hyun sighed. He looked at his bloody hands. The FBI has the money. They have my father. The Beak Empire in New York is dead. The feds are going to tear that tower down to the ground looking for evidence. So we are free, Ngozi said. A small smile touched her lips. We are free from him, Du Haiyan corrected. His voice was heavy. But we are not safe. Nature hates a vacuum, Ngozi. With my father gone, every other mafia in the country is going to try to take his territory. They are going to want to show how tough they are, and they know I am the one who took him down. Ngozi sat up slightly. She looked at his face. The dark, dangerous look was back in his eyes. You aren't walking away, she realized. Her heart sank a little bit. She wanted a normal life. She wanted to buy a small house and bake cookies, but she knew the man sitting next to her wasn't built for a normal life anymore. Sangwoo had broken him and built a mafia king. I can't walk away, Du Haiyan said softly. I gave the New York money to the feds, but I am still the boss of Chicago. Sangwoo's army works for me now. If I step down, they will kill each other fighting for control. They will come after us just to make a name for themselves. The only way to keep you and the babies safe is to stay on top. I have to rule them. Ngozi looked at the sleeping children. She thought about the cold, dirty streets of New York. She thought about the hunger and the fear. She looked back at Du Haiyan. He was a monster to his enemies, but he was a shield for her. If you rule them, Ngozi said, her voice firm and strong, you rule them differently. No more hurting innocent people. No more selling drugs to kids. You run it like a real business. You make it clean. Du Haiyan looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. She wasn't a scared maid anymore. She was a queen. She had survived a siege, fought a death squad, and killed a spy to protect her blood. She was exactly the partner he needed to control the chaos. We make it clean, Du Haiyan agreed. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a rushed, desperate kiss. It was slow and deep, sealing a promise between them. Suddenly, the loud sound of a heavy engine interrupted the quiet moment. Du Haiyan instantly grabbed his silver gun off the floor. He stood up, putting himself between the front door and the sleeping kids. He aimed the gun at the thick wood. The heavy footsteps crunched on the snow outside. Someone knocked on the door. It wasn't a police knock. It was a slow, rhythmic tap. Boss, a familiar, scratchy voice called out from the other side. Don't shoot. It is just your favorite freelancer. Du Haiyan lowered the gun. He walked over and pulled the door open. Ai Cha stood on the porch. She looked terrible. Her face was covered in black soot, and her tactical jacket had several bullet holes in it, but she was grinning her crazy smile. Nice place, Ai Cha said, walking right past him into the cabin. She went straight to the kitchen and started looking through the empty cabinets. You got any food? I am starving. Shooting Gatling guns burns a lot of calories. What are you doing here, Ai Cha? Du Haiyan asked, shutting the door to keep the cold wind out. I thought you flew back to the city to collect your money. I did. Ai Cha turned around, her smile fading. She leaned against the dirty counter. But I brought you a present and some very bad news. Tell me, Du Haiyan crossed his arms. The FBI arrested your dad. They dragged him out of the boat in handcuffs. It was all over the police scanners. He is currently sitting in a federal holding cell in downtown Chicago. Ai Cha paused. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, shiny object. She tossed it across the room. Du Haiyan caught it with one hand. He looked at it. It was a heavy gold ring with a dragon carved into the face. It was his father's ring, the symbol of the Beak Empire. How did you get this? Du Haiyan asked, frowning deeply. I didn't, Ai Cha said seriously. Your uncle gave it to me. Ngozi stood up from the floor. Sangwoo, he is alive. Barely, Ai Cha nodded. Your men dragged him out of the house before the FBI arrested everyone. They took him to a private doctor. He lost a lot of blood from his knee, but he is going to live. He sent me to find you. He told me to give you the ring. Du Haiyan stared at the gold dragon. His uncle was officially giving up the throne. He was crowning Du Haiyan the king of the entire underworld. What is the bad news? Du Haiyan asked, his voice cold. Ai Cha sighed. She ran a dirty hand through her spiky hair. The bad news is that your father isn't going to prison, Du Haiyan. He made a deal. Du Haiyan's head snapped up. What kind of deal? I gave the feds $3 billion. They don't make deals with guys who lose $3 billion. They do when the guy offers them something bigger, Cha said grimly. Your dad is a snake. He knew he was trapped. So he offered the FBI the names, addresses, and shipping routes of every single rival cartel in North America. He is selling out the entire underworld to save his own skin. They accepted that, Ngozi asked in shock. The feds love a rat, Cha shrugged. They put him in protective custody, but here is the problem, boss. The other cartels found out. The Mexican mafias, the Russian mob, the Italian families on the East Coast, they all know Chairman Beek is snitching, and they know he is your father. Du Haiyan felt a cold chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the winter air. The cartels put a hit out, Cha explained, walking closer to the fire. Not just on your dad, they put a hit on the entire Beek bloodline. They want to wipe your whole family off the map before the old man can talk in court. They are coming for you, Du Haiyan, and they are coming for the kids. Du Haiyan looked at the heavy gold ring resting in his bloody palm. The carved dragon seemed to stare right back at him, mocking him. His own father had sold out the entire underworld just to get a comfortable cell. And in doing so, the old man had put a massive target directly on the backs of Du Haiyan's sleeping babies. The Mexican cartels, the Russian mob, the Italian families from New York. They were all coming. They wanted to wipe out the Beek bloodline so the old man couldn't testify, and they wanted to take the empty throne for themselves. Du Haiyan didn't throw the ring into the fire. He didn't scream or curse his father's name. He just slowly slid the cold gold band onto his right index finger. It fit perfectly. It felt heavy. It felt like war. He wants to burn our bloodline, Du Haiyan said. His voice dropped so low it sounded like a wild dog growling in the dark. Then we are going to show the whole world exactly what this blood can do. We are going to paint Chicago red. Cha's crazy smile came back. She pulled her combat knife out and started picking dirt from her fingernails. Now you are talking like a real king. So, what is the play? Because this wooden cabin isn't going to stop a Russian hit squad. They will burn us alive in here. Call the scarred captain, Du Haiyan ordered, looking down at the sleeping kids. Tell him to gather every single soldier we have left. Empty the armories. I want every gun, every bullet, and every explosive loaded into trucks. We are taking the city back. Pause. Look at what is happening right now. Du Haiyan just put on the gold dragon ring. He is officially the Mafia King, and he is going to war against the entire world to protect Ngozi and his babies. Before we see this massive army clash, I need to know, are you ready for this war? Where are you listening from, and what do you rate Du Haiyan's king energy right now from 1 to 10? Drop it in the comments. Listen to me closely. The Russians, the Mexicans, and the Italians are all coming to kill these 3 sleeping babies. Du Haiyan is standing alone against a global army. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Timeless Caleb right this second, you are leaving him to fight them all by himself. You are letting the cartels win. Don't let them touch Ngozi. Hit subscribe, smash that like button, and let's help the new king protect his family. The morning sun barely broke through the heavy gray clouds by the time Sangwoo's armored trucks rolled up to the hidden cabin. Du Haiyan wrapped the sleeping children in thick wool blankets and carried them out to the biggest truck. Ngozi followed right behind him, wearing a fresh winter coat one of the soldiers had brought her. She held Du Haiyan's arm tightly. The air was freezing, but the fear in her chest was colder. They drove back into the heart of Chicago. They didn't go to the ruined estate by the lake. Du Haiyan directed the convoy to an industrial meatpacking plant on the south side of the city. It was a massive, ugly brick building with no windows on the ground floor. It smelled like bleach and old blood, but it was built like a military fortress. Thick steel doors, reinforced concrete walls, and narrow hallways that created perfect choke points for a shootout. Inside the main processing floor, over 200 men were waiting. They were the surviving members of Sangwoo's army, joined by hundreds of lower-level street soldiers who had heard the news. They knew the old chairman was gone. They knew Du Haiyan wore the ring, and they knew the cartels were coming to kill them all. Du Haiyan walked to the center of the cold, concrete room. He didn't need a microphone. He just held up his right hand. The gold dragon ring caught the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. The entire room went dead silent. My father is a rat, Du Haiyan announced loudly. The words bounced off the concrete walls. He sold out the business to save his own skin, And because of his weakness, the Russians and the cartels think we are easy prey. They think they can roll into our city, kill my family, and take our streets. Du Hyun lowered his hand. He looked at the scarred captain standing in the front row. They are going to find out they are dead wrong, Du Hyun promised, his voice dripping with pure, cold violence. I am not my father. I do not make deals. I do not hide behind politicians. If they step foot in Chicago, we do not just shoot them. We hunt them down. We leave their bodies in the streets so the rest of the world knows the Beek family is not dead. We are just getting started. The men roared. It was a loud, deafening sound of pure adrenaline. They raised their rifles in the air. They were scared, but Du Hyun gave them something to follow. He gave them a monster who was willing to fight right beside them. While the men rushed to fortify the building, moving heavy steel meat crates to block the doors and setting up sniper nests on the roof, Du Hyun took Ngozi and the kids to the manager's office on the top floor. It had a heavy steel door and bulletproof glass. He set the sleeping children down on a leather couch in the corner. Then, he walked over to a heavy metal desk. He unbuckled a spare gun holster from his chest rig. He pulled out a sleek, black Glock 19 and slammed a full magazine into the grip. He placed it on the desk and pushed it toward Ngozi. Ngozi stared at the gun. She remembered the feeling of the heavy rifle in the Chicago house. She remembered the sound of the soup can crushing Mrs. Kim's face. She felt sick to her stomach, but she didn't look away. I don't know how to shoot a handgun, she said quietly. I am going to teach you right now, Du Hyun said. He walked around the desk and stood behind her. He wrapped his large, calloused hands over hers, guiding her to pick up the weapon. Keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to kill. His chest pressed against her back. He smelled like gunpowder, sweat, and cheap coffee. It was a gritty, rough smell, but it made her feel completely safe. He showed her how to rack the slide. He showed her how to line up the white dots on the sights. Hold it tight, Du Hyun murmured right next to her ear. The kick will jump up. You have to control it. Don't close your eyes. Look your enemy right in the face. What if I miss? Ngozi whispered, her hands shaking slightly under his. You won't. Du Hyun kissed the side of her neck, a soft, tender touch in the middle of a war zone. You are fighting for them. You won't miss. He gently turned her around so she faced him. He looked deep into her dark eyes. I am going downstairs with the men, Du Hyun told her. The cartels will hit us tonight. When the shooting starts, you lock this steel door. You do not open it for anyone. If you hear a voice and it is not my voice, you point this gun at the door. If the door opens, you pull the trigger until the gun is completely empty. Do you understand me? Ngozi nodded slowly. She gripped the black gun tightly in her right hand. I understand, but you have to come back up here. You promised me. I promised, Du Hyun agreed. He leaned in and kissed her lips hard. He tasted like blood and winter air. He pulled away, gave the sleeping kids one last look, and walked out of the office. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind him. Ngozi immediately slid the massive metal deadbolt into place. She was locked in. Down on the main floor, the sun finally set. The ugly meatpacking plant was plunged into darkness. Du Hyun ordered all the interior lights turned off. The only glow came from the red emergency exit signs. 200 men stood in total silence, waiting in the shadows behind concrete pillars and steel crates. Ae Cha crouched next to Du Hyun near the loading dock doors. She chewed on a piece of gum, looking at a small tablet in her hand. Motion sensors on the perimeter just tripped, Ae Cha whispered, popping her gum. We have company. Looks like a lot of heavy trucks coming down the access road. They didn't even try to sneak in. They brought an army. Let them come to the door. Du Hyun racked his assault rifle. Wait until they are completely trapped in the yard. Outside, the loud rumble of heavy diesel engines filled the quiet night. Headlights swept across the brick walls of the plant. 5 massive armored transport trucks rolled into the loading yard. The gates slammed shut behind them. The back doors of the trucks kicked open. Dozens of heavily armed men poured out. They wore different colors. Some wore the heavy tactical gear of the Russian mob. Others wore the leather jackets and bandanas of the southern cartels. They had teamed up. They wanted to share the kill. A huge, bald Russian man holding a heavy machine gun stepped to the front of the pack. He looked at the dark, silent meatpacking plant. "Do Hyun Beak," the Russian yelled, his thick accent echoing in the yard. "We know you are in there. Send out the woman and the kids, and we will make your death quick. Keep hiding, and we will burn them alive right in front of you." Inside the dark plant, Do Hyun didn't flinch. He looked at the scarred captain. He looked at Ae Cha. He raised his hand, pointing exactly at the loading dock doors. "Light them up," Do Hyun ordered. The loading dock doors didn't open. Instead, the brick walls of the meatpacking plant seemed to spit pure fire. Snipers on the roof shot down into the trapped yard. Do Hyun stood behind a heavy steel crate and pulled the trigger on his rifle. The noise was deafening inside the concrete walls. The big Russian who had just shouted his threat didn't even have time to lift his machine gun. He dropped face first into the dirty snow, his chest torn to pieces by a dozen bullets. The cartels completely panicked. They were caught in a brutal kill box. The heavy steel gates behind their trucks were locked tight. They tried to hide behind the armored tires, but Do Hyun's men had the high ground and the perfect element of surprise. Blood soaked the white snow, turning it black in the dark night. Do Hyun dumped his empty magazine and slammed a fresh one into his rifle. His wounded shoulder screamed in terrible pain, but he ignored it. He was a machine now. He was protecting his blood. Suddenly, a massive boom shook the concrete floor. The blast was so strong it knocked dust from the ceiling. Ae Cha dropped down next to Do Hyun, wiping brick dust from her eyes. "They blew the side door," she yelled over the loud gunfire. "3 of them got inside. They are heading for the back stairs." Do Hyun's heart completely stopped. The back stairs led straight to the top floor, to the manager's office. "Hold the line," Do Hyun screamed at the scarred captain. He didn't wait for an answer. He dropped his heavy assault rifle, pulled his silver pistol from his hip, and sprinted back into the dark, freezing hallways of the meatpacking plant. Up in the dark office, Ngozi felt the explosion vibrate through the soles of her shoes. The babies woke up instantly. Kioma started to cry a loud, terrified wail. Ngozi rushed over and pushed all 3 kids under the heavy metal desk. "Stay down," she whispered fiercely, crawling under the desk with them for a second to kiss their heads. "Do not make a single sound. Mama is right here." She stood back up and pointed the black Glock at the heavy steel door. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the heavy weapon steady. She took a deep breath. She remembered Do Hyun standing behind her, his warm chest pressing into her back. Look your enemy right in the face. She heard heavy, stomping boots running down the hall. They stopped right outside the office. Someone jiggled the door handle violently. It was locked tight. "Open the door, bitch," a man yelled with a thick, angry Spanish accent. "We know you are in there. Open it, or we are going to cut those kids into little pieces." Ngozi didn't scream. She didn't cry. The fear inside her evaporated, replaced by a pure, violent protective rage. Do Hyun's words echoed loud and clear in her mind. "If you hear a voice and it is not my voice, you pull the trigger." The man outside started kicking the steel door. The metal groaned and bent slightly. Then, Ngozi heard the unmistakable sound of a shotgun pumping. He was going to blow the lock off. Ngozi didn't wait to see his face. She aimed the black gun right at the center of the door, exactly where a man's chest would be standing. She closed her eyes for one split second, and then she squeezed the trigger. The gun kicked hard in her hands, a loud bang filling the small office. She opened her eyes and didn't stop. She pulled the trigger again and again and again. She emptied the entire magazine, shooting blindly through the steel door until the gun clicked empty. Outside in the hallway, the men screamed in shock and pain. Then there was a heavy series of thuds as bodies hit the floor. After that, total, terrifying silence. Do Hyun ran up the back stairs, his lungs burning for air. He turned the corner and saw the 3 cartel men lying dead in a pool of blood in the hallway outside the office. The steel door was completely ruined, full of smoking bullet holes. "Ngozi," he yelled, panic choking his throat. He ran to the door and hit it with his fist. "Ngozi, it's me, open the door." He heard the heavy metal deadbolt slide back slowly. The door creaked open. Ngozi stood there. The black gun hung loosely in her hand. She was breathing hard, staring blankly at the dead men bleeding on the floor. Then she slowly looked up at Do Hyun. She dropped the empty gun and threw herself forward into his arms. "I got them," She sobbed into his bloody, dirty shirt. She gripped him like she was drowning. I stopped them. Du Hyun held her so tight he thought he might break her ribs. He buried his face in her neck, smelling the gunpowder in her hair. I know you did. You are so damn brave. I got you. You are safe. He looked over her shaking shoulder and saw the 3 kids slowly crawling out from under the desk. They were scared, their faces dirty with tears, but they didn't have a single scratch on them. The bloodline was completely safe. By sunrise, the meatpacking plant was dead quiet. The yard was filled with the bodies of the cartel's soldiers. The snow was ruined. Du Hyun walked out onto the loading dock, pulling his winter coat tight against the morning chill. He looked at his men. They were exhausted, bruised, and bleeding, but they stood tall. They had survived. Du Hyun ordered his men to stack the bodies in the back of the armored transport trucks. He told Ae Cha to drive the trucks right to the front doors of the Russian and Mexican Mafia headquarters in the city and leave the keys in the ignition. It was a clear, bloody message that no one could ignore. Chicago belonged to the Beek family, and the new king was not a man you ever wanted to cross. 6 months later, the hot summer sun was setting over the city of Chicago. Du Hyun stood on the massive stone balcony of his new penthouse. It wasn't cold, empty, and dead like his old place in New York. This place was incredibly loud and full of life. Inside the huge living room, the triplets were running in circles, screaming with laughter as they chased a fat, clumsy puppy. Uncle Sangwoo had sent the dog as a peace offering. The old uncle was still alive, walking with a heavy cane now, running the boring business numbers from a quiet office across town. He knew exactly what happened to people who tried to give Du Hyun orders. He stayed in his lane. Du Hyun took a sip of expensive whiskey. He wore a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The gold dragon ring caught the fading orange sunlight on his hand. Ngozi walked out onto the balcony, sliding the glass door shut to quiet the noise of the kids playing. She wore a beautiful, flowing red dress. Her dark skin was glowing in the summer light. The bruises, the cuts, and the deep exhaustion from that terrible winter night were completely gone. She looked like a woman who ruled a city. She leaned against the glass railing right next to him. The port managers called, Ngozi said smoothly, crossing her arms. They agreed to the new tax rates, no arguments, and they promised the shipping docks are completely clean. No drugs, no human trafficking, just legal cargo. Good, Du Hyun said, taking another sip of his drink. If they lie to us, Ae Cha will pay them a visit in the middle of the night. Ngozi laughed softly. It was a real, happy sound. She turned and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her chin on his chest. We did it. We actually did it. Du Hyun looked down at her. He thought about that miserable, rainy street in New York where he first saw her selling food under a tarp. He thought about the freezing boat on the dark lake, holding $3 billion hostage just to keep her breathing. He had burned his father's massive empire to the ground, fought a brutal war against the cartels, and sold his soul to the devil just to keep this woman safe. And looking at her smile right now, he knew he would do it all over again in a heartbeat. I told you I would fix it, he whispered, tracing her jawline with his thumb. You are a terrifying man, Du Hyun Beek, she smiled, leaning up to kiss him. I have to be, he murmured against her lips, his dark eyes scanning the bright, glittering city far below them. Someone has to keep the monsters away from our door. He held his queen tight against his chest, listening to the happy, innocent screams of his children inside the safe, unbreakable fortress he had built for them. He wasn't the soft boy who got his heart broken by his father anymore. He was the king, and he finally had everything he ever wanted. And that is the end of this crazy, dark romance. What an insane journey. From selling food in the freezing rain to ruling the entire Chicago underworld as king and queen. Du Hyun really proved that a man will burn down the whole world to protect the woman and the babies he loves. I need you to tell me in the comments, what was your absolute favorite moment in this entire story? Was it the fight in the garage, the sniper on the roof, or Du Hyun making his father kneel on the boat? Drop your thoughts below. If you loved this gritty, intense ride, you have to hit that subscribe button for timeless K-Love. Turn on your notifications so you never miss another dark, romantic thriller. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next story.